You are now listening to the fastest show on iSports Radio. My name is Daryl Kinsey Jr. welcoming you to the lap of the extra mile for today, October the 6th, 2022. Well, it is the finale. Well, we are getting to the closing dates of the season. Only 10 races remain between NASCAR and Formula One, which feels so weird to say at this point. We got a NASCAR championship to decide, a Formula One championship that should be decided this week. And help me talk about it is, of course, my co-host, Christopher Lehman. Chris?
How are you doing tonight, Daryl?
I'm doing great. I wish we had some financial data on Formula One to talk about tonight. We'll get to that in a minute.
I wish we had some financial data on our former president.
Yeah, well, I actually think they got that, but we'll see if they ever give it to us. But if you want to talk to us about the Formula One race, not the president, of course, make sure you get your comments in the chat. If you're listening live, we will read them out during the program. So go ahead and get started. We got Formula One and NASCAR to get to. Also got the Bathurst 1000 coming up this weekend, and Saturday Night Hydroplanes Division 2 gets started this Saturday. I will be on the call. More about that later. But let's go ahead and get to it. We'll start with a quick race review of what we saw in Singapore, where the race was won by Sergio Perez, who started second, led all 54 laps. Charles Leclerc actually started on the pole, finished second, because that's just what Charles Leclerc does when he gets on the pole. He finishes second because he is not that great of a starter, and we'll get into that later. Carlos Sainz finishes third to complete the podium for Scuderia Ferrari. George Russell ended up getting the fastest lap. 146.458 was that fastest lap. That was done on the final lap of the race. That race ended up ending a couple of laps short due to the rain delay and then just a myriad of safety cars and virtual safety cars that we had during the race. But to get into it, some of the race storylines, and we'll just start with this. Charles Leclerc cannot start a race to save his life, and it cost him another win. And I don't know how he's going to solve that other than more simulator work, but it's one of the many reasons why we're going into Japan with Max Verstappen all but certain to lock this championship up.
Yeah, and actually, I don't know if you saw, Daryl, but actually we saw a rare mistake out of Max Verstappen at the start of this race, and he dropped 4 places before they even made it to turn 1. So it was definitely a tricky track to get started on. And really, at the end of the day, you got to hand it to Checo. He launched perfectly, and that won him the race. That launch, you can see from his onboard, you could actually see Leclerc's tires spinning and him not really moving. But Checo started in second, kept the revs right, so that way he wasn't getting too much torque and breaking the tires, and he was able to just pull right off. And it was actually incredible. It looked like Leclerc wasn't even moving to his right when you see him, on the onboards drive by. When Leclerc's just got to figure it out. I mean, he starts on the podium, or he starts on the pole rather frequently. Really, I think he actually now has more poles than Max Verstappen. But that does not it translates to race wins for him, but not at the rate that it should.
Mm-hmm. I believe Charles Leclerc is actually the pole leader in Formula One, yet it is not translated into a championship lead, and we know why. We saw the Ferrari strategy blunders. He had some reliability issues, and then he had some unforced errors of his own. France really comes to mind, which is really where we said, okay, this championship is probably done. So I like Leclerc. I think he can be a champion one day. This year, I don't know how, if you're a Ferrari fan, and I know Michael would say this if he was here, if he's still a Ferrari fan at this point, this was nothing but an abject disappointment for the Frenchman and that team in general, because Charles Leclerc should have won this championship this year with how well that car started off.
Yeah, absolutely. And at Ferrari, it wasn't necessarily just the drivers, just the pit wall, just the factory. It was it was always at least one of those three things. You can't even pinpoint it to, well, it was just the driver, or oh, it was just bad strategy, or oh, it was just reliability. No, it was a combination of all three. And sometimes in each race, you'd get a combination of two or three of them kind of
Yep.
all in one time. So, I mean, Ferrari was destined to lose this championship. I started calling it like 4 or 5 races in. Um,
Yes.
it just, they really dropped the ball. And we have said this so many times at this point. It feels like, reinventing the wheel, but Ferrari needs a leadership change. That is the only way that they can go forward, is an organizational change from the top to the bottom.
Hmm.
um Otherwise, I don't consider them a series contender next year if they don't make any real changes.
Somebody has got to get fired at this point. I think we've said that like every week, but it's the truth that somebody's got to fall on the sword for this because they came out of preseason testing with the best car.
Hands
They
down.
came out, everyone thought, okay, Ferrari is finally back, and they fell flat on their face. But it is unfortunate for everyone that's not a Red Bull fan, as Max is just going to waltz to this championship. But another good question that we had after this race, another rain start that was delayed. Another race where you really can't say a lot didn't happen because this was an exciting race, but none of it happened where the rain was actually falling. And it got us to thinking, is the era of exciting wet races over? I honestly think with Formula One, I think we are done driving in the actual rain just
That
because of some of the factors we've seen with the fact that these cars are so aerodynamically disturbing the air, and you can see it with the spray. You just can't see when the track is proper wet.
Yeah, and I think part of that comes down to the fact that when it's not actively raining, the air, there's nothing to push that, um, the water, after the car goes over it, those molecules become really light,
Mm-hmm.
and they float, they stay in the air. If it's actively raining, it's going to push that down. Like at Singapore, you could see water droplets the size of frogs.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was a downpour, and I think that if they would have gotten started,
Mm-hmm.
that heavy rain would have actually knocked the moisture right out of the sky. And I know it sounds kind of backwards, but yeah, it's, as far as the era of exciting wet races goes, I definitely would agree with that. It's, back in the day, you used to look forward to a wet race because you'd see some action, you'd see passing, it was going to be a good race. But these days, it seems just follow the leader. There's not really a ton, unless your name is Max Verstappen and you pass the whole field twice. Other than that,
Mm-hmm.
there really wasn't a ton of action, with the exception of retirements.
And I think that goes into a bigger issue with these cars of the fact that they just cannot pass. Or they cannot pass well, I think is a better way to put it. Because we watched, and I watched the Singapore Grand Prix without the DRS. The field was pretty much stuck after the first few laps. They were stuck in their positions. That is something that Formula One has to, and I repeat, has to fix if we're going to see any sort of racing or actual racing out of this series. It can be a compelling sport, but a lot of the races, unfortunately, just turn into parades due to the aerodynamic issues that they still have not fixed since even with these new rules. I'd say the passing has gotten better a little bit. Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing some passing going on that is not DRS assisted. And obviously it was wet, but I mean, Max had his way with the field, and I mean, he was catching cars, you know, even 5, 6 laps. He was he was definitely making a lot of time. I mean, that car is also unfair compared to the rest of the field, so maybe that's not the best example to use.
Hmm.
But he he was able to get his spots back. He was making a lot of passes on midfield cars, which take it or leave it at that. But the leaders, definitely there was not a lot of action going on. So I would,
It's mhm.
yeah, they're too aero dependent. I would agree with that.
And they've been too aero dependent for years. Now they're trying to get it back, but I think the FIA's got to take bigger swings at it to get them to not make the cars so aero dependent, because the engineers, is the way it goes, they try to cut off half a second, and then these engineers go, and by the time the cars touch the track in Bahrain, they got it all back and then some. They have got to cut like seconds worth of downforce off these cars, so that makes any sense. And if it makes them slower, fine. We just want to see a good race. And having the field pretty much where they are after 2 or 3 laps is not exciting, other than, if somebody has a pit stop issue, Ferrari.
Yeah. No,
Mhm.
I agree. They need to do something, but it was kind of like we were saying at the end of last year. The teams that can do it are going to figure out how to set themselves apart really quickly. Um, I kind of expected to see a little bit more out of that in NASCAR, to be honest with you. It doesn't seem like any one team has necessarily gained a massive advantage. But yeah, in the Formula One side of things, there's 3 teams that are setting themselves apart from the rest of the field, and they're the same 3 teams that were ahead of the rest of the field in the last era too.
Mhm. And maybe that'll shake up with the engines in 2026, and we'll have a new rules package then. But we shouldn't have to wait 4 years at the same time to see a compelling race. But we'll see. We will see. Sergio Perez got into a little bit of drama at the end of that race. Got the 5-second penalty for falling more than 10 car lengths behind the safety car. We didn't find that out until after the race was even over, which again goes into the situation of why does it take so long for the Formula One to put out penalties? And WTF1 on TikTok had a good point. There was supposed to be for those of you that watch Premier League Soccer, a VAR style, or basically video replay style system that was supposed to be implemented so we wouldn't have this issue. And by all accounts, Formula One just did not implement the system. So we're still stuck doing this. It was supposed to be put in place to fix the exact situation we've been having. And I don't know if the FIA thought, okay, everybody's calmed down about Abu Dhabi, we don't have to actually make any changes or whatever, but I am really tired of finishing the race and having to wait for them to decide about what penalties, about something that happened in the race.
Yeah, I agree with you, and kind of what I texted you in our group chat was I think that if after the last, if something happens on, lap 11 to go, so meaning, the race distance minus 11 laps, if something happens there, that needs to be decided before the end of the race. And if it happens from 10 on, then that's a fair game for after the conclusion of the race. Um, how and kind of going back on that though is if it happens before 11 to go, and or if something happens and the investigation isn't started once that 10 to go starts, that's fair game. That's done. You can't go back. It's like in football, once you snap the ball, what happened on the last play didn't count, as far as
Mm-hmm.
penalties goes. That's how this should be. The FIA should have a certain number of laps to start the investigation and finish it. And if you miss that window, you miss that window.
And also to that effect, some penalties just do not need quote-unquote investigations. You were either 10 car lengths behind the safety car or you weren't. And it was obvious that Perez wasn't. You should be able to make the call right there.
Correct.
It shouldn't take 15 minutes and a conversation with the driver you're going to penalize about what happened. You know what happened.
Yeah. And props to Checo for talking himself out of that one, because he did.
Mm-hmm.
He very much talked himself out of that, which I'm sure every driver has talked himself out of a penalty, I'm sure. But usually I don't think the race winner talks himself out of a penalty.
No.
And I think the thing that people really took kind of took and ran with was the fact that the FIA said in their investigation, or not the FIA, but the race director, it said in his investigation that they did not think that the wet conditions were cause or a sufficient cause for Checo to fall so far behind. And that's kind of the defense he used, was that it was wet. He just didn't want to run into the back of the car with the brakes cooling down and getting wet, blah, blah, blah. The FIA said, or whoever says that's not a good enough reason to fall back. And then in literally the very next sentence, they said, taking into account the wet conditions, we're applying a 5-second penalty, not more. So it's just one of those things where, like, what the hell is going on?
I have no idea, and I don't think they know.
We've
known since Abu Dhabi 2021, nobody has their head on at all in that stewards room. It's probably the worst officiated motorsport of the big, I'll say the big three, but of the internationals, they're the worst. And you would think they would be the best because everything is measured to the nth degree, but they cannot figure out how to A, call these penalties, or B, call their rule book correctly. C, last year's championship race. No, I'm not over it. And no, I'm not going to stop using it as an example of how bad the officiating is, because it's emblematic of the entire system. It's overcomplicated for no reason, and it shouldn't be this complicated.
I agree with you 100%, and I think that the officiating is definitely questionable. I think that we could be saying that NASCAR has some questionable officiating as well.
Oh Lord.
Yeah, which
We'll
that's its own thing. But I mean, the thing about officiating is, in every sport, it doesn't matter what sport it is, sometimes you get it wrong. And as far as sports fans, we understand that you don't always get it 100% right, and that's just how it is. Everybody's benefited from a bad call, or a no call. But as far as Abu Dhabi goes, I mean, a championship decision calls kind of a big whoopsie daisy. And then same thing with this. I mean, I don't know why they needed to wait so long, or why they made the decision to wait until after the race was ended to even start the investigation. But as far as I'm concerned, you look at the replay and you say, yep, he was more than 10 car lengths back, or, and maybe there is a little bit of a gray area where you say it's wet, so maybe we'll give him more like 12 car lengths. But either way, there's a set number, and if the car measures out where it's further back, that's a penalty. It's like stepping out of bounds in football. Well, his whole foot wasn't out, so maybe we don't call it. No, that's not how it is. The equivalent of your toenail goes over the line and you're out. And that's how it should be with specific rules in Formula One.
And we've seen the bad calls in NFL. I think all series right now having questions about officiating. But it'll seem like the last time I talk about Abu Dhabi 2021, then we'll move on. If you want to make changes to a championship or do anything with the rules, don't do it in a situation that's going to alter the outcome of the season. That is why that just summarizes why everybody is pissed. You changed forever how the season played out. And there will always be questions about that championship, and Max didn't deserve that. He did not deserve to win his first championship like that and still have these questions hanging over it almost a year later. So hopefully nothing happens with this 2022 championship so we can just
it already
move
is
on. That's more about people being mad about the 2021, but we're also dealing with this situation with the results of the financial audit from last year, which was supposed to come out yesterday, is now coming out on Monday. And Chris, we were talking about at the beginning of or before we came on the air, the FIA cannot stay out of their own way. They really can't. Correct.
And I would just like to say that the official stance of the Extra Mile is that this is alleged. We are in no way insinuating that any team is guilty or not guilty. Mm-hmm. This is just in response to the rumor mill and may not reflect our own thoughts and opinions. Mm-hmm. If a certain team that I root for is guilty of that, then so be it. We'll, take the penalties. I really hope that it turns out to not be the case. But at the same time, the media blitz around it is just crazy, and it people are already writing off this championship for Max as invalid as a result of overspending last year. It's not necessarily helped with Lewis making some comments in the media. It doesn't help,
No.
And
everybody's playing the politics game right now, and it is alleged, we have to stress this, it's alleged that the two teams that violated are Red Bull and Aston Martin. We have no idea if that's true or if that's just people spinning stories in the paddock, which it's Formula One. It's 50-50. For all we know, it could be nobody. It could be Haas. I mean, heck, it could end up being Mercedes. We just don't know. And if the FIA had released the documents yesterday, we would know. It would be, the big story for today, and then we'd get into the racing and forget about it. Now we've got this cloud hanging over us. It's going to go through the Japanese Grand Prix. Then Monday morning, we're going to figure out who it was, and then we do this all over again. We don't know the amounts. We don't even know if they did anything. And we don't even know if the penalties are going to be announced at that time if they did violate. So this whole story that should have been done this week can now drag on again 4 months because the FIA decided to delay for reasons that are unclear.
Yeah, and I would just say that I have seen some people on Twitter who at least claim to be accountants, and they say that anybody who is familiar with accounting will be understanding of what's happening, because we're not talking about your household finances where you're reconciling your grocery bill. We're talking about, tens and tens and tens of millions of dollars worth of things. And I mean, there are so many little things to go over and make sure that everything's right. And, one typo or misentered receipt throws everything. So I think that they're making sure, and before they go public, they probably went to, we don't even actually know if anybody went over. So this is all speculation anyway, but they could have went back to the teams and said, hey, check your books. You were over this amount, check it out, and they might have resubmitted paperwork that was in the clear, and the and the FIA is now validating that that changed paperwork or whatever is valid. And it does take time. I mean, you're talking about probably hundreds of thousands of transactions that you're looking through and validating. So this is going to take time, and it's better to take the time than to issue a penalty and then lose it in court a couple months later when those teams fight it, and then it turns out the FIA was wrong and adds that much more of a black cloud over their integrity.
Yeah. Who knows? Who knows what's going to happen, but we'll figure that out later. So we're going to Suzuka. It's going to be a wet, cloudy weekend there in the Japanese Grand Prix. This is a fun technical circuit that I think the drivers have missed. We haven't been able to go there the last couple of years due to the pandemic. I think everybody's ready to be back there. Chris, I know it's going to be fun, but it's going to be a late one for those of us in America. You plan on staying up for this one?
I do. I absolutely do. I guess we'll see how things are going with the 1000 and but it's definitely going to be a late night for us United States people.
Between that and the Bathurst 1000, man, it's going to be late. It is going to be such a late night on a Saturday. So get that coffee, get that energy drink, whatever you use to keep you awake. Make sure you have it and use it safely, but frequently, because you ain't sleeping on Saturday night.
Yeah, it starts at 1 a.m. on Sunday.
Jesus.
Now, I will probably stay up for it because I might be celebrating a second consecutive world championship. So I should probably stay up for it. But again, we will see.
I will be finishing up broadcasting for Saturday Night Hydroplane League by the time that race is getting ready to start. So I'll probably have Bathurst on one screen, the Formula One race on the other here in the den, and I will try my darndest to stay up, but I like my sleeps, so I don't know if I'm going to stay up that late, but it'll be fun to see how this race goes.
Yeah, I have a feeling I will not be watching the roval.
No, because you're going to be knocked out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm going to be crushing Red Bull on Saturday night.
Yeah. Please be careful, because a friend of mine who is actually racing in an SNHL on Saturday, his love for Red Bull actually put him in the hospital earlier this summer, unfortunately.
It's almost got me before. Yeah. I have, if I drink too much, I do have heart palpitations.
Yeah, he had those.
Yep, I've been there.
Yep. And that's all energy drinks, by the way, not just Red Bull.
Yeah. Oh, see, I only drink Red Bull. One day, we can talk about how stupid it was, but I had about 80 to 100 ounces of Red Bull in a day.
Jesus!
Which is for those of you, I don't even buy the little cans. I just buy the 20 ounces, and I had like 4 or 5 of them in like a 4 or 5 hour period. I could feel my heart beating out of my chest.
Don't do that, folks.
Yeah, that was the last time I did that. Now I have like one a week.
Yeah, the few times I drank Red Bull, it was like the small cans. It was all right. I have ADHD, so the last thing I need is more energy. But don't do that.
I really wish
do what Chris did.
I really wish that you could buy Red Bull just the flavoring.
Yes.
Because I don't necessarily need the energy benefits out of it. I don't even care about that. I just love the taste of Red Bull.
The taste is not bad. I will say that. Like, if they sold Red Bulls without the energy stuff, I would get it. But, like, I can't do the energy thing. I got too big of a Starbucks coffee one day, and I was useless for the entire day. So, ADHD and energy stuff does not mix.
Absolutely.
So we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll flip over to NASCAR. This was probably the cleanest Talladega playoff race we've seen, and folks were still mad.
Before we jump over, Daryl, we missed I think, one talking point worth going over.
Mhm.
And that is that Total Wolf said that he is going to miss races in 2024 because of the number of races.
Which I have a comment about that. Here's what we'll do. We'll go to a quick break. We'll come back, talk about the Total Wolf situation, and then get into NASCAR because I absolutely agree that that might be a thing going forward. We'll be right back after this.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Davidson.
It's your boy, the Notorious Live.
And we are the hosts of Fast Break here on IE Sports Radio, where we discuss everything in the world of basketball from prep to the pros.
You guys should definitely check us out, man. Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. We got all the basketball information you guys need, so we look forward to you guys listening in.
And please do, because we are the best basketball show on this side of the Mississippi. And please do check us out on Twitter at FastBreakISR. D-Lock, where's our time again?
8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. That gives you guys plenty of time on a Sunday.
Tune in.
Sports fans, do you like teams that are tough, cities that are tougher, and fan bases that are passionate about their teams? How about teams that are historic and stadiums that are iconic? Then you belong in Chicago, and you need to check out Chi-Town Weekly. Join me, Adam Kernan, every week as we keep up with all things Chicago sports. Bears, Bulls, Blackhawks, Cubs, White Sox. We'll cover them all, plus more. The Windy City is always buzzing, and we'll keep you up on all the big games and major stories. So tune in to Chi-Town Weekly every week right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
And hey, folks, if you want to support IE Sports Radio, make sure you get in on the Patreon. $5 gets you a shout out on all of our shows, and expanded and higher tiers also include merchandise, access to the podcasting university, and a chance to be on our flagship show, The Defining Moment. So thank you so much for helping to make IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that is sports. And of course, we have to thank our Patreons. Those are Bay Area Raised, Los Great, Key to the Gate, and one anonymous Patreon user. So thank you so much. So we will now go on to continue with the Formula One conversation. Then we'll get into NASCAR. Total Wolf came out and said that he will sit out some races due to the number that are coming in 2024. Now, we have 23 races. Liberty Media has floated 25. They want to do 23 next year. 25 Formula One races is far too many. And we went over the regular season. Chris, unfortunately, was not there. There's 4 triple headers in the season and a quadruple header. I think they're going to race the entire month of May, I believe it was. This season, for the type of travel they're doing next year is going to be backbreaking for all the teams, all the drivers, all of the support staff. These folks are not going to be home that long. And that hurts family relationships. That adds stress. That adds every sort of negative modifier you can think about it. I agree with Toto. And Chris, you asked the question, will others follow suit? I think you will see some other team principals and team staff do the same thing.
Yeah, and Checo is very vocal that if they exceeded 24 races, he'd retire. And Checo does not seem like the type of guy that makes an idle threat like that.
Well, Checo just had a kid, didn't he?
Correct, which lends more to the fact that he'd be out.
Yeah, unless your name is Tom Brady, once those kids come in, everything changes.
Yeah.
And you don't want to miss time with your kids because you have to go jet setting around the world to run an overbloated Formula One schedule.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100% on that. And I think that the FIA is going to run into trouble, or well, Liberty Media will run into trouble if they really push that 24 plus calendar or 24 plus race calendar.
And it's not even that. Let me bring up the 2023 schedule again, because you have to hear some of the foolishness of how they're going to be traveling next year. And we'll do this quickly and then get into NASCAR. So we start off, of course, with Bahrain. We're then going to go to Saudi Arabia, Australia, China, Azerbaijan. Okay, that makes a little bit of sense. We're then going to go to Miami, to Italy, to Monaco, and Spain, back to North America for Canada, back to Europe for Austria, Silverstone, Hungary, and Belgium, then to the Netherlands, and that's before the summer break. Then you go Europe, Asia, the Middle East, back to North America, and they'll stay here for a month, and then go to the Middle East again to end the season in Abu Dhabi. There's too much doubling back on themselves and too many dates that are far too close together. And as we saw in 2021, with the supply chain issues, you are putting a lot in the hands of freight. I can tell you that one.
Yeah, and I can tell you that my job, I do logistics. That's what I do for a living. And things are getting worse, not better.
Yeah.
Just overall, in case anybody's wondering. So they're depending on the trucking, not even I shouldn't say trucking, I should say the transportation industry, that I don't know how it is worldwide, but here in the United States, it's not looking good. It's getting worse and worse and worse. And yeah, I think that their stupidity is going to cost them in the end. I know we love talking about the cesspool that is Twitter.
Yes.
people are defending the globe-trotting back and forth, saying like, why would we have all three races in America right in a row? Well, put all the European cities, or take Europe, put it over the United States. And I guarantee you'll be surprised how big this one country is compared to Europe.
Yeah.
Our cities are further away. Miami and Las Vegas and Montreal are very far away from each other. They make a very large triangle. So this talk that they wouldn't get enough track crowd, they wouldn't get enough people at each race is ridiculous, because like me, if I drove to Montreal, it'd take about 5 hours. If I drove to so this would actually be a good idea. So from my house to Montreal is about 5 hours. From my house to Miami is about 24 hours. And from my house to Las Vegas, I'm just going to Google Maps that real quick, just in case people really need to know how big this country is. If I got my car and drove to Las Vegas right now, Google Maps is still trying to figure out how long it'd take. It would take 36 and a half, 37 hours. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure that somebody from my neck of the woods will be going to Montreal, not those other two races. And if you look at the United States as a whole, there are clusters of people who would not be traveling race to race to race.
Yeah.
There's enough of a population that we don't have to worry about North America not having enough people attend to these races.
I don't think you're going to oversaturate the F1 market here. This is the third largest country by population on the planet. I think there's enough people you're going to find that can go to these races, depending on how much the tickets are going to be. And I think we'll figure it out. They've got to group these races better, and we've got to cut some of these races off the schedule, Monaco. If we're going to, have a schedule that's not going to burn these teams out. But speaking of burning teams out, let's go over to NASCAR for a bit. They just got done with the Yellowwood 500, and Chris, this was probably the cleanest race I have seen at Talladega in quite some time.
So I was helping Steph out around the house, and I got a notification that said Chase Elliott won the Yellowwood 500, and I was like, oh, I completely missed the race. Mm-hmm. I didn't see a lap of it, to be honest with you. I literally forgot that there was a race on because I was busy doing other things.
Well, family does come first. And it was, what I will say was the cleanest. It was not the wreck fest we usually expect at Talladega, which I think we're all happy about, especially with all this conversation about concussions. Christopher Bell spun in stage 2, rallied back for 17th, but his championship chances are in trouble. He is 25 points back of safety there in the line. Chase Elliott is 7th. He's 11 points to the good, but he has the win, so he will go through automatically. Toyota just did not have the speed on Sunday to challenge. The highest finisher was Denny Hamlin in 5th, and it was sad to see because for whatever reason, those cars had too much drag on. I was listening to Bubba Wallace's radio. He just did not have the speed to pull the line, and during the last run to the checkered, he just pulled out a line and got to the back and just raced conservatively to bring it home. And that is sad, but there's nothing you can do if the car doesn't have speed. So Toyota will have to look at their super speedway package going into next season. But some off-track storylines. Alex Bowman, unfortunately, Chris, he will not be taking further part in the championship because he has concussion systems for the second straight week.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Daryl, but I was just kind of looking at Twitter while you were talking. And remember Tua when he stumbled after being hit?
Oh, geez, yes.
In the Colts-Broncos game right now, there is a dude who literally can't even stand. That's how hard he got hit.
We got to do something about these hits in the NFL. We got to do something about these hits in NASCAR. NASCAR, I think, is going to be an easier fix than football, but these concussions are getting worse and worse. I know we've got 3 drivers now that started the season that will not compete in Charlotte. Cody, I think, Cody Ware has a leg injury on him. Or not Cody, it was Corey, sorry. Leg injury there. And then the 2 concussions with Bowman and Kurt Busch, Kurt Busch is probably not coming back the rest of the season. This is an issue, especially with this new car. And hopefully they are going to get it solved. NASCAR has a crash test planned for this month, but it's worrisome that we're seeing a lot of these head injuries here in NASCAR and then other injuries in the sport as well.
I just sent you a link to that.
Oh my God. I just saw it. I don't know what to say as far as the NFL situation. This is hopefully they will talk about this on 3 and Out. I know Larry will, but the game's got some problems with these hits, and they got to do something about it. And I know with us, with our sport, we've got issues with hits as well that have kind of been created thanks to the rear crash structure of the new car. Hopefully, it will get fixed. And we'll see what happens from there. But we are going to the Roval. And, Chris, this is the last road course of the year. It is the most chaotic road course of the year. 3 years in, it has continued to be the most chaotic road course of the year. What do you think we're going to see this week?
I don't know. This season is just so unpredictable. I mean, who would have thought that we would have made it 5 races into the playoffs before a playoff driver won? This is anybody's race. I have to imagine smart money is on Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott. I'll probably pick Christopher Bell like a dumbass because he won the Daytona road course 1 time. So, but I expect pandemonium, to be honest with you. I think it's going to be exciting. I hope that I'm awake to see it. Because I would expect some action for sure.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be some action. I wonder if anybody's going to run into what used to be called the heartburn turn. I know our first year there, like half the field forgot to turn there on a late race restart. It went into the wall. I'm hoping we get some rain there again. The Xfinity race from the COVID season, I will always remember when Xfinity ran in a literal hurricane. That was a fun race. That is also a race that I am 200% sure if there were fans there, they would not have ran it. As we were talking about earlier about, doing things for the fans that are in attendance. There was nobody there, so they could just run the race because everybody was watching on TV. But I absolutely believe if there were fans there, with that rain going on, they would not have run that event. But it shall be fun. It will also be the last race to decide who is going to run in the round of 8 in the playoffs. 3 are still alive for the spot. With Austin Cindric, William Byron, and Christopher Bell, they're the 3 drivers alive outside to fight for it. Chase Briscoe has it on 341 points. Cindric 7 behind. Byron 8 behind. Christopher Bell 25 behind. Chris, either of these 3 drivers between Cindric, Byron, and Bell going to make it through?
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I forgot to update our standings, but William Byron had that go away, so we can add 25 points to him.
So Byron is in. Briscoe is now out.
So it's Briscoe and Austin Cindric. I believe I saw that they are both minus 12 to the cut line.
Yes.
And Byron is in.
Right. So they're fighting Byron for the spot at this point. So Byron is already in. Between Cindric and Briscoe, do you think either one of them get in? Because I still feel like this is going to be one of those days where we're going to have someone that hasn't won before get in or win a race just because of how crazy this season has been.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm looking at the standings right now. So 12th is Bowman, who's going to stay there, obviously. Bell is in 11th with 3,036. He's effectively out. Cindric, 3,069. Briscoe, 3,069. Suarez, 3,081. Barring a win, I don't see it.
It's going to be tough.
I mean, Suarez has 11 points, and I mean he races fairly well. I mean, short of like Byron crashing and Briscoe or Cindric getting like a top 10, or a top 5, I probably don't see either of them making it.
It will be tough, but the way this season's gone, anything can happen, and anything probably will happen when it comes to the 2022 NASCAR season, which would be one of the best seasons in history if we didn't have all these injuries and other issues behind there. Which, speaking of those, before we get into some of our tangential information, Kevin Harvick got penalized 100 points for L2 violation for an aerodynamic parts breach on a single source part from NASCAR. Ronnie Childers suspended for the next 4 weeks. Both of them then took to Twitter to start the black helicopters flying around in NASCAR. I guess they're trying to insinuate that this may have been retribution for them coming out about the safety aspects of the car. And I will say to everybody, Tony Stewart talked trash about Goodyear on a radio show, and NASCAR fined him immediately. They don't need to do black helicopter stuff if you make them mad. They're just going to hit you with the fine for
actions detrimental.
Yeah, they're just going to hit you with the actions detrimental and move on. And it's not like they're trying to kick Harvick out the playoffs. Harvick's already out the playoffs. So I don't know why we're stirring the pot here.
Yeah, Harvick and Childers, they got their tinfoil hats out, and they are dangerously down the rabbit hole. If either one of them happen to be listening, please open the curtains. Maybe even tomorrow go outside, because everything is not a conspiracy.
Find the grass, touch the grass.
Yep.
That is what I will say on that. But it'll be fun. That race can be seen on NBC on Sunday where we go racing at the Roval to figure out who is going to be in the Championship 8. But we're not done here with the show. We got even more racing coming up this weekend. The Bathurst 1000. I love endurance races. This is one of the best. The V8 supercars getting into their endurance season. They're going to take to Mount Panorama, one of the most treacherous tracks in the world. People keep saying Formula One should go here. Absolutely not. Someone would die.
Absolutely. And I think they would die in FP1.
Yeah. Formula One's too fast for Bathurst.
Yeah, as far as endurance racing goes, I think Mount Panorama is probably my favorite track just because of how dangerous it really is. They actually used to do a Bathurst 24-hour. Daryl, you and I were kids when they ran that. They did it for 2 years back in like 2000, the very early 2000s, like 2002 and 2003 or something like that. Mm-hmm. That would have been incredible to witness. But no, I think Bathurst is awesome. Mount Panorama is just a phenomenal track. I've done it in iRacing. Yeah, it's fun.
I've run it in Project Cars and I've run it in Gran Turismo, and it is a track that it doesn't cut you any slack. One mistake and that's it. You're in the wall and you're done, especially going up that mountain section where you can't really pass, nor do you want to try. You kind of just want to hang on and survive that section.
Yeah, see, going up for me is not a challenge. It's actually remembering that there's that chicane.
Yes.
Because I could race that. I could do like 100 lap session, and on lap 99, I've forgotten about it, and I blow right into that wall. Every time. It does not matter. It's just that middle section on top of the mountain and then going back down. That's where I lose it. And then in Gran Turismo, depending on what car you got, as you're coming down towards the finish line, you've kind of got that right-hander that's you're like cresting a little bit of a knoll, and I always go shooting off. Like if I'm racing something, I always forget to slow down for that too.
I think that is the chase. I'm looking at the track map now, so I can't remember because of course in Australia all the corners are named. But yeah, that McFinley Park down to Forest Elbow section, which includes the S's and the Dipper, that catches out so many drivers during the Bathurst 12-hour. Guys just run into the wall right there and end their day. And then coming down Conrad to the chase. A tree actually fell on Conrad during one of the 12 hours of Bathurst practice sessions. So, like, the entire field is stopped back there while they get some road workers with chainsaws to cut the tree up. But not only do you have to worry about the trees, sometimes you have to worry about the wildlife. Because kangaroos are known to run across the track there in Bathurst. You do not want to hit one either.
That's just like Australia in a nutshell for you, isn't it?
Yeah. Someone in the Bathurst 12 hours hit one, it ruined their race. So you don't want to do that either. But you will see co-drivers in this race because this race is going to take at least, I think, 5 to 6 hours to complete. One driver is not going to do that. So they will have their relief drivers there in the race. And another thing, this has been a really good season for Shane Van Gisbergen. Defending season champion, gonna tie most wins in a season, and it's pretty much already locked up the 2022 championship is what it sounds like.
Yeah. The domination has been real, and it's been since early on in the season. I mean, he's won the most races. He's at how many do you have it up in front of you?
I'm bringing it up now. I just got to find the actual points because their website is not that great.
He's got almost a 600 point lead. I know that.
It's 525 at this point.
Yeah. What is his race wins though? He's
looking for that.
I think he's in the. There's been. I think this is number 28 for the season. I think they're 28.
He's won 18 races this year.
Yeah, they're 28 rounds in, right?
Yeah, and he's won 18. Chaz has won 3.
Yep, and
who's
he's
our
got
defending
the second
champ.
most.
Yep, he's tied up with Will Davison and Cameron Waters. And
Yeah.
Anton De Pascale is the only other driver that has won this season.
And he's got 1.
Yep.
Yeah.
Shane is on he's on an absolute tear.
Yeah. It's been incredible, and the record most wins is in sight. He's definitely going to grab it from Scott McLaughlin. No doubt in probably anybody's mind. Actually, Scott is at the Bathurst 1000. I saw on Twitter he posted a picture there. I don't think he's running. No, he's not. I don't think he is. But yeah, it's as far as dominant seasons go, I mean, this is one for the ages. I didn't expect to see anything like this so soon after Scott McLaughlin left.
No, it has been complete domination.
I thought he was going to really leave a I don't want to say a power vacuum, but that's probably the best way to do it. I just figured that there would be a big struggle to kind of take over the reins after he left, but that's not really the case here. We have a very dominant driver running the series.
Yep. This season's going to go down in memory as one of the most dominant in supercar history, and they have 2 more races after this. They will run in Gold Coast at the end of October. Then they will come back December 1st through the 4th, which is actually the start of their summer, to run the Valo Adelaide 500, which everyone is happy to see Adelaide back on the schedule. This year they will end the year. Adelaide actually used to start the schedule, but there was this thing called politics got involved, and the Adelaide 500 went away for a little bit, but now it's back, so we're all good.
Ford also unveiled a new car this weekend.
Yes, the Gen 3 supercar looks amazing.
Absolutely. That thing's a beaut.
Yeah, and we saw Chevrolet's last year, who was taking over for Holden.
Yeah.
That is going to be a beautiful championship next year. Ford also wants other manufacturers to come play. Last time they had multiple manufacturers was Mercedes and Volvo, who stepped in for a cup of coffee and then left. Especially, which was sad for Volvo, because those cars were just getting good. But it is going to be interesting to see who decides to take up the challenge.
Yeah, I'm sure somebody will step in. Maybe Porsche. Who knows?
I don't know if they have a car to fit the template, but they'll figure it out.
No, but they're not coming to Formula One, so.
No, and we did see that there was which we thought, before we get into Saturday Night Hydroplanes and say goodnight, there was a lot of brouhaha over the contract with them and Red Bull, and really just came down to control of the team, as we thought.
So I read, and this is speculation, that so Red Bull corporate wanted Red Bull Racing, because they do operate as 2 entities in a way. So Red Bull corporate wanted Red Bull Racing to pair with Porsche. That way, if Red Bull ever wanted to pull out of the sport, they would have a buyer right there ready to go. And Red Bull Racing was like, nah, we're good. And they kicked Porsche to the curb. And then they're re-upping with Honda. As we can see this week, Honda is back on the car. So
I should have done to begin with.
Correct. So it makes you wonder why Red Bull corporate wanted more of an equity partner in the company. You know, not putting my tinfoil hat on or anything, but it does make you wonder.
Sounds like change of leadership, and someone might be trying to reorganize for that 5-letter word that I hate that starts with a P. And we'll see how that goes. But hopefully Red Bull stays around for a little while longer. But this weekend, if you guys aren't doing anything with the myriad of racing going on, the Saturday Night Hydroplane League Facebook page, 7:30 p.m. Eastern, we get started with Season 5 of the Saturday Night Hydroplane League. Division 2 getting started with the Apple Cup at Chelan, Washington, from the virtual Lake Chelan. You can watch it starting at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. With pre-race, we will have some conversations with some of our brand new rookies before we get started. Pete Lacoste and Connor Harnack are 2 drivers you're going to want to watch. on Saturday night. Both these drivers ran well last season, and they are the odds-on favorites for the championship and to move on into Division 1 next season. So you're going to want to join us. Chris, I don't know what you have plans for, but should be a lot of fun getting to see some virtual hydroplanes go around on Saturday night.
Yeah, I'll probably pop in and join you. I'll have to re-download Facebook because I don't really use it, but yeah, I'll pop in and check it out.
Yep.
Be drinking Red Bull.
We were going to have a Red Bull boat, but then Elijah had some, obviously had the complications. But now he's going to be running a boat sponsored by Old Bay, which is our state seasoning at this point. But check out the Miss Dunn's Famous, presented by Local 144. That will be the boat of Pete Lacoste and the Miss Alpine Stars of Connor Harnack. They're going to be near the front in each and every heat on Saturday night. Make sure you check it out. 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. we go racing there in Division 2. I want to thank everyone for listening as we throw the checkered flag for this episode. Remember, Chris at Fiji Sims. I'm at DK Jr. 12 on Twitter. Michael's at Michael_Ward25. Unfortunately, we didn't get to hear from him this week. Make sure you keep it locked to all our social media pages on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Also, make sure to follow all the iSports Radio pages there as well. If you missed any episode of any iSports Radio show, it can be heard wherever your podcast can be picked up, including the YouTube repository, which has a copy of literally every episode from every show that we've ever done. So make sure you check that out. And before we leave, we got to do Nearest the Win, and it is time to announce a champion in Nearest the Win. As there's 20 points left, there's a 23-point lead. And for the first time since we've been doing this show, the host has won Nearest the Win. 51 points. I have taken the win. Chris is second with 28. Michael third with 17. We will obviously have points to add to those numbers as we get to the end. But feels good to finally win the winner's pick game of your own show finally. I think literally every other host but me has won it.
I was thinking that I would play Super Max for your victory when you were doing your little victory lap there. I was going to Super Max for you because that's championship caliber music right there.
Yeah. I just got lucky. I'm not even going to say there was any rhyme or reason to it. I just got lucky.
Well, I also really got held up on Colton Herta, and I kept picking him over and over and over again. And I think last year when I won it, I was a lot more conservative, and this year I was just kind of goofy about it sometimes. Mm-hmm. I'm not taking away from your win at all because you did a freaking fantastic job of picking. But next year I will be going back to the more conservative route of picking Kyle Larson every other race. And not picking Alex Bowman so much or Chase Elliott or Christopher Bell. I'm coming back for the title next year.
Yeah, I just got surprisingly hot, and then the funny part was you were picking Colton Herta. You stopped picking him. The one time I picked Colton Herta, he ends up winning.
Yep, I remember. I remember that vividly, Daryl. I still actually have PTSD from that.
That was hilarious. But it was a fun game. It is still a fun game, and we get to pick this week. We've got the Roval and Suzuka. I think I'm just going to go Verstappen and Chase Elliott. Just play it safe here at this point.
That's not that I'm copying you to beat the spread, but that's literally my picks too.
Yeah. I mean, there's nobody else to go. You know what? I already won the championship. Let's play a wild card. Nicholas Latifi is going to win the Japanese Grand Prix. Go ahead and put that up down as my pick.
You know what's going to be crazy, Daryl, is that somehow you just put that out there, and that's probably going to happen. And then Williams is going to no longer get rid of him, and we're going to be stuck with him next year, which is better than who we were going to get, which is Paul DiResta.
If Nicholas Latifi somehow wins this race, absolutely not.
I'm going to go put $10 on him right now just to make sure. I either retire a happy man or you were wrong.
Either I cost you $10 or you just got a great retirement. That's what's going to happen there. But
yep.
Again, hashtag nearest the win with your picks with who you think's going to win this weekend. We're going to go ahead and get out of here. For Chris, I'm Daryl. Thank you so much for listening to The Extra Mile. We'll see you at the next green flag. Good night, everybody.